Need to stop the transcript, and here we go. Right, evening, everyone. I hope everyone's had a very good week. Obviously, just a reminder that next Monday there won't be class, so please don't phone and check where class is. It is a public holiday. We obviously don't teach on public holidays. Right, anything exciting in the week of leadership this last 7 days, the past 7 days? Anything that you want to share that stood out for you from a leadership perspective? It is water, it's not vodka or whatever other white alcohols there are. I lie, guys, it's actually coffee. Anything stand out this week from a leadership perspective? I think for me, it's the flip-flopping again in terms of what is happening in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. And apparently, there was going to be the strike of all strikes last night, and that was called off, apparently, by the Allies intervening. Iran says that they're not coming back to the negotiating table. It's quite interesting. In a world of so much information, there is also so much and disinformation. And I don't know whether it's market manipulation or not, but we get these contradictory messages, and one side is more afraid than the other of showing weakness. It's almost that weakness is unacceptable, that we live in a world of the manosphere where being bold and strong and aggressive are the standards that we judge leadership by. We don't consider the idea of being vulnerable acceptable, of actually taking a step back and saying, let's work together. It is force and power and threats versus what normally would be better in negotiations. We have an issue here. Let us together deal with this issue. Anything that you want to share this week about leadership and issues in leadership? I know that commission is still going. It is a sideshow. I cannot spend more than 2 minutes watching it. It is too much. The South African. I don't know if I did see something on the commission today, and I just flashed away from the news. I wasn't interested. Anyone want to share anything from a leadership perspective? Okay. If not, then we'll continue with tonight's bits and pieces. I think my face has been on here enough. This is not AI. So if we look at the relationship between leadership and influence, I think you cannot really practice leadership without practicing influence. And influence is the underpinning element of leadership. Why did no one greet me tonight? 2 people greeted me. I feel so sad right now. I'm going to remember this. I'm taking a screenshot. Ninawa and Tam, you guys are going to get a fantastic mark in the next assignment. The rest, well, okay. Guys, so in terms of leadership and influence, the suggestion here is that influence is an underpinning necessity of leadership, that without influence, you can't lead. Now, the one thing we must understand about influence is that it's not necessarily a negative thing. They are absolutely, Tam. You are aces. I mean, just write your name on the page and you're going to get a really good mark. Don't AI your name though, please. Influence is not necessarily a bad thing. There are a variety of ways of exerting influence. And maybe I shouldn't say exerting influence. I think it should be more the idea of using your influence. Now, in terms of the forms of influence, I think the first thing to understand is that influence is about personal power. That power comes from your knowledge, comes from your personality, comes from your charisma. And then we get the more negative uses of power, the kind of threats and suggestions of threats or consequences that could be negative for a person. And I think the focus around it is to change how people behave, is how people react, how people actually will work within an organization. So I want you to look at these forms of influence, and then we can chat about which your preferred forms of influence are. So, rational persuasion is where we look at the knowledge and giving people an understanding of facts and stats and numbers and figures and evidence to suggest to people why this is worth pursuing. Praising, I have no issue with this. Bringing people up to speed and sharing. Praising is telling somebody that by doing a particular thing in a particular way, there are certain benefits that are likely to follow. And those benefits can relate to your career, to your skills, to your profile. It's almost consequences. If you do this, the consequences will be these things. Inspirational appeals is the kind of things that we see in sports coaches before a game. Those words, those hi Abigail, those words we share, those sort of rile people, work people, get people excited before they run onto the field. Russie is very good at it. We saw in the previous World Cup, Peter Steph du Toit step up and have very few words to say, but very powerful. And I remember the words. If you're scared, obviously in Afrikaans, tell us, and we'll find somebody else who'll go do the job. And I think often it is about your values, your ethics, those kinds of ideals that you have. You know, it's to say to somebody, it's the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. We have a job to do. We have to make a difference. Consultation is another form of influence where we allow people to make suggestions. It's part of that sort of participative management stuff, and so you have an idea of what will happen, but to sort out the minutia, to sort out those finer details, we bring people aboard, in particular those individuals that have to carry out the plan. Exchange is a step beyond this. So it's a step beyond appraising. It is, if you do this, these are the benefits that are likely to follow. And those benefits are very, very specific. Bonuses, time off, a salary increase. And you can often quantify in terms of exchange how much the benefits will be. Personal appeals, yeah, come on, we mates, come on, do it. You know that this is the kind of thing I would do for you, and that personal loyalty. Now we get to the negative ones, that kind of ingratiation. These are the things that if you do it to me, you get my backup immediately. Complimenting, praising a colleague in order to get their help, the kind of thing. You're the best person to do this. This is the kind of thing that is in your wheelhouse. You are the kind of people, the person that people want to learn from. I hate that kind of. I don't know if I'm allowed to say blowing smoke, and I won't continue with finishing that sentence. And then the real negative ones, in my opinion, telling me I'm in charge, you will do. I'm here to give instructions, you are here to perform. And if you don't perform, then obviously I have the right to take consequences and make consequences happen, the kind of threats of dismissal and disciplinary action and the pressure. And the coalition, oh, I'm also not a big fan, where we have people get on board slowly, and those individuals, the coalition, go and convince others that this is the right thing to do. So Which are your preferred choices? And please be honest. Which are your preferred choices to influence? With a show of hands, I'll go through these consultation. I quite like consultation, Nadine, because it brings people on board. And also the thing with consultation, often it's those individuals who have to do the work, who have the knowledge, and who can make a real contribution. And it's also acknowledging people for what they are. We keep appointing knowledge workers, but then we leave them out of decisions. Inspirational appeals. Okay, very, very nice. Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with it. It definitely isn't negative. I think, and often a lot of people still have a strong work ethic. People still want to make a difference. Okay, also consultation, inspirational appeals. Okay, now so you're in sports, absolutely. I mean, that kind of call to arms moment before a game. We also see these kind of inspirational appeals in sales. It's often used in sales talks. I'm not a salesperson, so it's not really the stuff that works for me. That I love that. It's a wonderful, wonderful example of that. And appraising, which is appraising. Okay, yeah, I think it's that reminder of we're not doing this for nothing. Can I see? And I'm hoping for okay, appraising and consultation. Okay, Francois, rational and praising. Okay, guys, can I say, is there anyone that will use these? And it's about being honest sometimes, and it depends on the organizational culture. And I think it's important to remember. I mean, when I was at varsity, now this is a very, very long time ago, way before most of you were born. When I was at varsity, I worked during the holidays. I did a range of things because I paid for myself through varsity. And I I worked on a construction site for one holiday. And on construction sites, this kind of pressure, coercive approach, I am the boss, you will do, that becomes a real, real thing on a construction site. A couple of praising, a couple of ingratiation, rational persuasion, appraising, I quite like that. Um, these ones, yeah, for me, Valencially, it is with certain types of people, and I think often it's with people, and I hate this term because people use it too loosely. But with narcissists, that kind of praising happens. If you want to see a praise, sorry, let me try that again. Ingratiation with narcissists, ingratiation works. If you want to see ingratiation go wrong, watch people praise Trump all the time. When you sit in their cabinet meetings, and it is about looking after narcissists. Pete Hegseth that constantly said no other president would do it. This is the greatest president. It's that kind of. I'm not a big fan of it, and some people, if you are very arrogant and are narcissistic, you won't see through it. Anyone here that would use their position, do it because I'm in charge? Be honest. Are there moments it's necessary? I mean, this is the stuff that, yeah, gets my back up. I mean, yeah, I become a quite an unpleasant person when somebody tries that with me. Um, and coalition, yeah, go for it, Nadine.
I just wanted to say something with legitimating tactics. At the end of the day, when I'm in a position, I'm also operational health and safety on our campus. So that includes pre-primary up to college. Over 100 staff, over 1,000 students, parents, all of them my responsibility. So sometimes those policies and organizational rules need to be there. And if you don't follow the correct procedure for doing supervision at playground time, that becomes a problem because that parent can turn around and make life very difficult for us. So sometimes those tactics are necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. But often they might become necessary when you've done that with them. If people still don't react when you've done the rational persuasion, can you see how you would transition from rational persuasion potentially to that? Because, and I'm talking about those areas there, the legitimating tactics and the pressure, because other stuff doesn't work. But for me, this is in exceptional circumstances. In exceptional circumstances where people have deliberately ignored rules, where this first bit of trying to convince them with facts and evidence hasn't worked. And I suppose you have to and get pushed into the corner where you might have to use, and I would use those in combination. Anyone want to comment about that? When rational persuasion doesn't work, we go to those two there, legitimating tactics and pressure. Can I just see, has anyone ever done that? Had to do that? Yeah, it's a tough one. But Nadine, you are honest because at school, I mean, things go wrong so very rapidly at schools, in
Yeah,
particular during playground time. Go for
yeah,
it.
and especially because we also have our 30-year birthday bash coming up. So we are expecting over, I think, 5,000 people. So the things that need to be put in place can't just be nilly-willy and appeals. It needs to have policies and organization rules in place. Otherwise, we as a management team do get into big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any comment on that, guys? Anyone in a management position want to share their view on that? I think though that it has to be preceded by that, the facts and the detail. I think if you just go there directly, people will get their backs up. I think if you yeah, I'm not the best person because if you tell me I will, unfortunately I won't, which is not a good response to things. Okay. Any other comments on this, guys? Want ek is vol nonsense, mense. Ek is vol nonsense. If you don't understand that, somebody will translate for you. So, in terms of, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think, yeah. So, in terms of legitimacy, it is in compliance. And I think that's what Nadine is saying. I think you need compliance, in particular when you deal with school kids, because, I mean, things happen very, very rapidly. Yeah, I don't want to share the name of the school, but it is a private school and it's not Hilton and those ones. But when raids happen on bags and things like that, the stuff that gets found in bags and the stuff that gets confiscated, some of it is very, very serious. The one thing that I find interesting in all schools now is would be the number of vapes that are found hidden in bathrooms, because vapes, kids start vaping at 12, because it is so easily and readily available. And I think you need those kind of compliance things. Okay, so in terms of the two categories there, I'm going to start with overt. These are the obvious ones, and it's the force and the threats, and if you do this, this is in it for you, and the persuasion, and you're not hiding what you want to achieve. The covert, the more subtle of the two, the ecology, and I love the example from last week moving somebody's office closer to the executive, certainly from the place where you perform your work perspective, will send a message. And then magnetism, and it is the charismatic stuff. I think there are people that are naturally able to attract people, attract followers. There are people who have this almost invisible force that surrounds them, that and that invisible force sparks enthusiasm and excitement amongst people. Uh, I've spoken to people who have met Nelson Mandela, and they tell you when you get into his presence, he had this energy field that was contagious in terms of the excitement and that moment and the ability to get people excited about things. And I think Mandela is a wonderful example of somebody who had real magnetism. Can you think of other leaders? Other leaders who have the same kind of pull, the same kind of ability? Go for it. So the Richard Bransons of the world, I believe, has that same kind of presence almost. Right. Now I know that we've discussed some of the stuff because I think these are some of the assignment questions. Let's look at the difference between leadership and management. In your own words, what is the difference and what would you prefer to be called? Would you prefer to be called a manager or would you prefer to be called a leader? What go for it, Gavin?
I think for me, leadership is about leading people. Management is about management is about managing processes and non-human things, whatever that might entail. So I suppose it really depends what your job is. I would obviously my ego would say I'd prefer to be called a leader, but it largely depends, I think, what you're doing.
And it's exactly that. There's this kind of romanticism around the concept of leadership. And it is about people. And you're right, management is about processes. And I think when given the choice, people prefer to be called a leader because it has this connotation of creating enthusiasm. When we talk about the great leaders of the world, no one's ever said who are the great managers of the world. It's not a concept or a notion that would cross anyone's mind. It's interesting. Abigail says she prefers to be called both, and we know that those two have to work in combination. But I think a manager seems to almost suggest less than what a leader is because of the romanticism tied to the idea of leadership. So, in terms of strategy and leadership, and the reason I've left the strategy here, because we will see strategy again, is that often when we think of those individuals involved in creating strategy, in creating vision, in making sure that we have an organization moving forward, those are often leader type positions. Those are the senior and the executive managers that will, executive leaders that will do that. Managers will often work in giving life to that strategy. And you're right, Tam, it is about vision and inspiration and guiding people where managers do the organizing and the day-to-day operations. But even in your definition, there is a real sense of romanticism around what a leader does versus what a manager does. A manager just feels more technical, where a leader appears more inspirational. So, from a long term perspective, I think we know that you have to have a sense of a company's vision, its mission statement, its long-term objectives. It gives us an idea of the markets we operate in, and then also it gives us an idea how we will get a competitive advantage. Will it be on the basis of cost? Will it be on the basis of differentiation? Will it be on the basis of focusing around a particular niche market? I'm going through this fairly quickly. Again, from a leadership perspective, we know that once the vision is created, managers then will align the resources and the competences with the actual fulfilling of that vision. We also look at values, and when we think of where leaders get involved, they would set a vision and a mission statement closely aligned to the mission statement. You would have a value statement, and then managers on a day-to-day basis will have employees try and live those values in carrying out their duties. Strategic planning, long-term strategic thinking, very much again, the vision creation, the thinking and looking into the future. Now we get to where I need to be. Strategic leadership. So we know that your strategic leaders are your executive leaders, and it's very difficult in modern companies to know where executive leadership starts and finishes. In some companies, you'll be part of an executive team. In another company, that same person would be part of a senior management team. And sometimes in other companies, you would be, when you're a middle manager, in some other companies, you would be a senior manager. So here, from a strategic leadership perspective, this is where that vision and mission and value statement and long-term objectives happens. So from a strategic leadership perspective, I think there are a couple of things that will differentiate you from a lower leader. The first one is when we are at a strategic leadership level, and obviously you'll get input and feedback from lower levels, but your job ultimately is to track the external environment, is to have an ear to the ground, from a change perspective, and then see whether we have the resources available internally, whether we have the capabilities and we have the competencies to make whatever we plan in our vision to actually turn that into something real. The one thing we know about strategic leadership is the fact that this is where ambiguity happens, because there are no clear indications in an environment. We know we have this ridiculously fast changing, very complicated environment that we have to deal with. And trying to discern from that environment what we need to do in the organization to survive and thrive is what makes you operate at a strategic leadership level. It is anticipating, it is predicting, it is trying to discern how those potential changes in the environment will impact the organization. And then asking the question, what must this organization look like in future in order to cope with those changes, those anticipated changes? I also think that when we look at strategic leadership, you think across every single function in the organization. You're constantly, from an internal perspective, not just thinking for finance. You're not just thinking for marketing or for logistics. You are having to consider all those elements and know how those elements together create synergy. And then obviously at that level, it is about vision and then getting people below you to buy into that vision and then give life to that vision. So when we think of strategic leadership, again, you can see the same words come out here. The fact that it's about trying to figure out what will happen down the line in the future. It is about creating that vision for the future. It is about being able to adjust the direction of the organization because of unanticipated changes happening. And then also, it is to think somewhere in the future. Someone that was really good with that was Elon Musk. Very, very good at looking at the environment and being able to draw from the environment those elements that are important and that have to be prioritized from a product perspective. If we look at what CEOs get paid in the country, you start to understand how important and how difficult this role is considered. I think the gap on average, and I haven't done an update on my facts now, but the gap on average is about 200, 225 to 1 in terms of the difference between how much a CEO gets paid and how much the lowest person in an organization gets paid. So a CEO would earn 250 times on average more than the lowest person. But we can understand why CEOs are paid that much because it is a complex, complicated position to be in. And then providing that direction and creating some buy-in in getting to that vision. Who aspires to that level of position? Be honest. Who aspires to the CEO level of position? There must be people who aspire to that. I mean, you're doing a course to go up in the organization, and some of you are already senior managers. Who aspires to that? Not a single person aspired to that. I certainly don't. That's not where I see myself. No one? At least you're honest, Gav. At least you're honest. um, Too much stress. Yeah. Big money, though. I mean, you could have some seriously expensive hobbies. Um, Not a single person. It's interesting because normally there are always one or two people that will put their hand up. Too short. Yeah, no, CEOs, that would exclude me as well. Can't play golf. So you're up. You can learn to play golf. Yo, I love how you guys define what a CEO is. I don't know if I shared this with you about 20 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer. A gentleman sued the American government because he could never be president because he, in his 20s, was starting to go bald, and America has never had a bald president. But Laura is not a psychopath. And and apparently, if you look at American presidents, none of them have ever been bald. I don't know how true that is, because to be the president of America, hair apparently is important, guys. Who here is balding or has gone bald? Want to share with us? Because you can't be American president. It also just shows you how artificial being the president of a country is. Yeah, no, he definitely has enough hair for everyone. I can just wear a wig, man. No one will know. Yeah, I love your definitions. Who here is already in that executive position and constantly thinks, what the heck am I doing here? A stick-on toupee. In America, you'd be arrested for treason if you said that, Gavin. You would be arrested for treason. I promise you. That's the only thing that qualifies me to be an American president, is I have great hair. So to be considered as operating at a strategic level, I think there are a couple of things that we expect at this level. The first one is that ability to build knowledge of the environment. So it's that ability to look at the insanity that is the environment And on the basis of that, figure out what is going to impact the organization, how it's going to impact the organization, what the priorities are for the organization. It is also about personal leadership. I think sometimes we need to remember that at an executive senior leadership position, you're setting the vision and the mission statement. And this personal leadership is about walking the talk. It is living the values that you put into the value statement. It is being the role model for making that vision a reality and getting people to understand what behaviors we expect. There's a lot of self-discipline involved there as well. I don't know whether golf is part of that. Maybe golf is. I've tried. Well, I have a golf set, but I'm the worst golfer in the world, so that also excludes me. As also understanding the business. So that's why often we see CEOs spend time in different departments as they make their way to the top, because you have to understand how the mechanisms of the business pull together. And then also make sense of how those would become part of a future vision, and then building a shared understanding of a vision. Clem Sunter, and I'm sure I've shared this with you already, when he was chairman of Anglo American Gold, said that his job as the CEO or as the chairman at that point was to create a vision and to share the vision. And then he also said was about managing by wandering around. So it was about vision, creation, sharing, and managing by wandering around. And feeling comfortable with change. So, who are the people here that embrace change, that are always ahead of the curve in adopting new products and new systems? Let me ask it the other way around. Who here likes the old ways and would consider themselves a little bit resistant to change? Anyone want to be honest? Yeah, I must admit, every so often I have a moment where I'll go, not again, a new change. I can't do this anymore. I really have those moments, in particular when there's a new thing we have to do. And I think, oh my gosh, just leave me alone. And then we know that there is a real sense of functional skills, whether they finance, whether they HR, whether it's somebody who comes through operations. But it's a wonderful thing to embrace. There's nothing wrong with tradition. The only time tradition becomes an issue is when it becomes a place where people stagnate. But the amount of change and the constantly having to update, some people are fed up with change. Guys, I love asking these in exams. I would put an NB here because I love asking this and this one as well in an exam. I can't promise you that they're there because I can't remember what's in the exams. Those are some of my defaults, to be honest with you. When we look at what strategic leadership is, and it gives us a variety of attitudes. The first one, it's an attitude towards society. I think in terms of attitudes towards society, it is to see how we form part of our broader stakeholder groupings, and society, and our role in society now and the future is important, but it's also to see the world from a very broad perspective. The second one, to oneself and others. And I think that attitude is the fact that you have a lot of self-discipline and a lot of emotional intelligence. And then to the business of the company, the core principles why this company exists. I just want to let Valencia in. And part of that is to understand what our core business is and staying with that core business whilst checking that we're on track going towards the vision. And then stability and change. And it's that almost constantly having the organization stable enough, but not too stable that you can't change when it's necessary. Stability is important because stability is often required to get things done, but it's not that stability where it's embedded to the point that it can't be updated. And then action and reflection, constantly doing and then questioning what we've learned from the actions that we've taken. The other elements of strategic leadership are these three. I don't know if we've done this before: absorptive, adaptive, and managerial wisdom. Guys, did we do this last semester? I can't remember. I'm just going to open Teams. I'm sure I've done this with you. Anyone want to share what absorptive, adaptive capacities are? I'm going to explain it my way. Those of you that are my generation, before we had SSDs, we had hard drives. Now, that's my attempt at a circle, which is not the worst one I've had. But if you looked at old, I think they were called IDE hard drives, they were encased, and inside the case, there was this big silver disc. Inside the case as well, sitting on top of the silver disc, very much like an old style record player, was a read write head. So you had the silver disc inside. And what would happen is when you saved something to the computer, it would appear as a file on there. And I know it's a lot more complicated. Now, if we think of the human brain as the silver disk and a place where we save information and knowledge, every time you interact with a person, thing, or an event, you create a file about that person, thing, or event. Sometimes it's in the form of an opinion. Sometimes it's in the form of a bit of knowledge. It doesn't really matter, but it happens as this file on your brain. Now, let's say with people, I'm going to say the first time, or suggest the first time you met me, you created an impression of who I am. Now, normally that impression starts with the word I and ends in the word T, and you can fill in the DIO into those letters. Others would have said intelligent, but obviously I'm a realist. And then once we've spent time together, every time you interact with me, you access that little bit and you might update it and rewrite the file about who I am. Okay. It's the same thing about the world. In terms of absorptive capacity, what will happen, we interact with people, things, and events, and we create a theory about that. And that theory could be about how technology should work, a paradigm that we have, a mindset that we have. Adaptive capacity is that once you have that theory living on your brain, is to take in new information, which is again absorptive capacity, but it's the ability to change what you believe to be the rules around that specific thing. If we think of Nokia, when they decided not to go touch screen, they absorbed the fact that touch screens have happened, but they believe that those push button phones would be the future. What Apple did is they changed their mindset on what will happen from a phone perspective. So absorptive capacity is the ability to take information in. Adaptive capacity is to take that information And even if it's uncomfortable with your own paradigm, is to reassess that paradigm and then have a fresh way, essentially rewriting the theory on your brain. I don't know, it must make sense because it makes sense to me. So I'm going to put you on the spot. When you first met me, what was your theory about me in terms of those I's and T's? We can play hangman. Hopefully it's changed to something slightly different. Guys, give me examples of some of your theories that you've had to update because you've had to question what you believe to be the rules of the world. Some of the theories that live in your brain, that new information has come in. And despite how uncomfortable that new information is about your existing theory, you've had to look at whether that theory is still relevant. Give me examples of that. For me, it was adopting and adapting to online banking. I, for a long time, just did not want to do online banking, not trusting the process. But then I realized, but my mindset was against that. And now, obviously, I have an app and I do everything online. Anyone else? A theory that they've stuck to maybe too long about the world? Is that a theory that you have, Matflora? It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And it's sad because hard work alone doesn't get you noticed. Yeah. And often we limit the amount of, and it's the opposite of where we limit our absorptive capacity, where we actively go and look for information that will support our existing theory, which is also as dangerous as not adapting to new information. Using AI. Yeah, well, I have a student in honors who will not touch AI, despite the fact that I want people to embrace AI. I just don't want people to cheat with AI. I mean, Tamrin, who is resistant to using AI, has had to be told by her employees, stop being silly. How's that going, Tam? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. Are you still AI resistant, Tam?
Trying.
Trying. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. And just remember, sometimes people will actively go and look for information that supports their existing theories. Um, Anyone want to share anything from your perspective on this? I mean, for me, some of the I was resistant to AI, and now I live by AI. But and very much like Tam, I just didn't see the worth and the value of it until my older son showed me how to use ChatGPT, not as a form of Google, but as an AI. Guys, and then managerial wisdom. I think it's the ability to discern things from the environment that other people can't. Um, does wisdom come with age? Can you have wisdom as a young person? Wisdom is often gut feel or shows itself as gut feel. It is knowing without knowing. It's instinctive. Who here considers themselves wise to have wisdom? Who here considers themselves not to have any wisdom? Oh, shucks, I just put my hand up because it's the truth. And I think we see this when we look at modern strategic leaders. They have to have absorptive capacity. They have to be able to absorb even uncomfortable information that doesn't fit their current frame of reference. If information doesn't fit that frame of reference, they're able to adjust that mindset, and they're able to discern, they're able to see things that other people don't. So you can see the elements there, guys. Oh, and the one thing, yeah, no, I think so. But I think also we must understand that doing the same thing 15 times is not experience. I think it is new experiences and exposing yourself to new learning opportunities that will get you to that wisdom point. I quite like this Kairos time idea, the ability to take action at the critical moment, to know when that iron is hot enough to strike with. And Steve Jobs was astonishing at these things. You know, when he launched, nothing was ever arbitrary. It was well thought out. He had that ability to do things at the right moment, whether it was his first standalone computer, the first Apple Mac, whether it was the iPhone, the iPod, etc. So let's look at taking management versus leadership a step further. I think when we go back in time, we always think of production lines that looked a bit like that. I mean, there was mass exploitation. If you ever get a chance, watch, and it's a wonderful example of a production line. Henry Ford's production line, or manufacturing the Model T Ford, you'll see it's in black and white, and you'll see what a horrific production line was. And the rule on that production line was narrow jobs where you train people to a narrow set of skills, where you measured how long it would take to do a particular job, and you would let them practice until they can do it within that time limit. And it was done in terms of time and motion studies. Who still has time and motion studies where they work? I think they're called industrial engineers now. It's not time and motion anymore. And I know industrial engineering is a little bit bigger than that. Where do you use it, Anthony?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, so my grandpa worked with him. He's in a steel fabrication company. So
Okay.
then
Okay.
we have a whole production line, and then how long it takes him to make a bracket, and then move on to the next section and all of that kind of stuff.
And have you got a time and motion department, boy, or do you bring in
No, that's just
consultants?
me. I go up there and time them.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's and so you guys have standards in terms of what it takes to manufacture certain things and how long something should be at a workstation.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
do it by the minute, how many they can make in a minute. And then we do that by how many we make in an hour, and then from that, how many we should make a day.
And you base that time on what they can do, what the people are capable of doing.
Yeah, and also like a machine, how long the machine's actually able to produce something, like a bending machine, how long it
Okay.
takes to bend the tubing and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Very cool. And those standards, are they benchmarked against other companies?
No, it's more of benchmark against how much we know we can do a day. So if they're going
Yeah, so
under,
on
then
historical benchmarks.
yeah, we normally make it like 80%. So like how much they can do a day, and then
Okay.
80% of that is what we expect. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very nice. Thanks so much for that. Well, anyone else have something similar? Yeah, so we've seen a move away from it, but we still get industrial engineers. I mean, there are firms that will come and tell you what the standards are. The best example of it, if you get a moment, watch how long it takes in Formula One for the mechanics to change four wheels, four wheels and tires. I think the record is about 1.8 seconds. So those of you that watch Formula One, it's normally about 2.5 seconds to change to get four wheels off and four wheels back on. The one thing we know is that, I mean, in a second, you will travel 100 meters down the straight. So you can gain 100 meters or 200 meters. You can even pass somebody in the pits if you can get yourself down to 1.8 seconds. If you've never watched Formula One, just on YouTube, search fastest pit stops ever, and I think it's something like 1.8 seconds. Okay, it's incredibly rapid. And that's just the stand when you stop and the car stops moving. 1.8 seconds to change four tires. And that's time and motion, where you know where to place yourself, where you know where to hold, where you know where to put whatever equipment you're going to use. And in terms of this very, very clear managerial control, with almost managers as frontline cops checking and making sure that that production line moves. And remember, these are moving production lines. I'm going to stop there, guys, because I'm rushing now. Thank you so much for attending this evening. Any questions, any comments?